The sky over Prime burned with colors that should never exist in nature. Ambassador, as stood at the observation window of the council chambers, watching his world die. Orange and red streaks cut through the atmosphere as warships continued their bombardment. Each flash meant another city destroyed, another 1,000 lives gone. How long until the shields fail? As asked without turning around. His aide checked the readings on a nearby console. The young's hands shook as he worked. 6 hours, Ambassador. Maybe 8 if we're lucky. Luck as almost laughed at the word. They had run out of luck 3 days ago when the Empire arrived in their system. No warning, no demands, just death raining from the sky. They were a peaceful species. They had spent thousands of years building a civilization based on art, science, and philosophy. Their greatest achievement had been joining the Galactic Concordance, a union of civilized worlds that promised mutual protection and cooperation. They had friends out there among the stars, powerful friends who had signed treaties and made promises. But when they came, those friends were silent. As had sent 17 messages to the Concordance, 17 desperate pleas for help. The Protectorate had military fleets that could arrive in days. The Defense League had pledged to defend all Concordance members. Where were they now? Why did no one answer? Another explosion lit up the sky. As could see the smoke rising from what used to be the cultural district. Libraries burning, museums reduced to ash, centuries of knowledge gone in moments. Ambassador, his aide said quietly, the council is asking for you. They want to know if we should surrender. Surrender? The word tasted like poison, as knew what they did to species that surrendered. They didn't take prisoners. They took resources, planets, territory. The people who lived there were simply removed, efficiently, permanently. Tell the council I'm sending one more message, as said, one that can't be ignored. He walked to the main communications console and began typing. This message would be different. It wouldn't be coded for the Concordance alone. It would broadcast on all known frequencies in every major language with coordinates and a simple plea. They were dying. They needed help. Anyone who could hear them, please come. The message included everything. Visual records of the attack, population numbers, cultural database samples, everything that made them who they were. If they were going to die, at least the galaxy would know they existed. As activated the transmission, the message shot out in all directions, a desperate scream into the void. He watched the signal spread on his screen, reaching farther and farther into space. It's done, he said quietly. His aide looked at him with large, fearful eyes. Do you think anyone will come? As didn't answer. He couldn't lie to the young one, and the truth was too cruel to speak aloud. Far across the galaxy, in a sector marked on most star charts as Quarantine Zone 7 Terra, a ship received the message. The TSS Indomitable was a massive vessel, over 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons and armor plating. It was one of 7 ships in the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet, sent out to explore the regions beyond Earth's small sphere of known space. Captain was in his ready room when the alert came through. He was a tall man by human standards, with short black hair and the kind of eyes that missed nothing. He had commanded the Indomitable for 3 years, leading his crew through uncharted territories and first contact scenarios with various asteroid-dwelling species. But this was different. Captain to the bridge, his communications officer called over the intercom. You need to see this. Arrived on the bridge within seconds. Commander Na was already at the tactical station, her fingers flying over the controls. Lieutenant Wu sat at the science station, his face pale as he watched data scroll across his screens. Report, said calmly. We picked up a distress signal, said. She was a sharp woman, quick-thinking and direct. It's not human. The language is unknown, but the AI is working on translation. Captain, they're broadcasting everything. Cultural data, population figures, real-time footage of what looks like an orbital bombardment. Move to the main viewing screen. The AI had already begun translating the message. Images appeared showing a beautiful world with blue oceans and green continents. Then the images changed. Ships in orbit, cities burning, people fleeing in panic. "How far?" asked. "4 days at maximum FTL speed," Wu replied. "But Captain, we're not supposed to make contact with advanced civilizations. The protocols. The protocols were written before we knew there were civilizations dying while calling for help," interrupted. He studied the images carefully. The beings in the footage were slender, graceful creatures with large eyes and delicate features. They reminded him of the deer he had seen on Earth, beautiful and vulnerable. "How many ships do we have in range?" asked. Checked her console. The entire Third Fleet, all 7 ships. Captain Min Ho's squadron just finished their survey mission in the next sector. They could join us. Stood silent for a moment, thinking. Humanity had only been traveling in space for 80 years. They had built their fleet in secret, hidden from the rest of the galaxy. Most alien species didn't even know Earth existed. The ones that did had marked it as too dangerous to visit. Earth was what the galaxy called a death world. High gravity, dangerous weather, aggressive predators. Most species that evolved on such worlds destroyed themselves before reaching space. The few that survived became conquerors, spreading war wherever they went. But humans were different. They had learned to channel their aggression, to use it for protection rather than destruction. At least, that's what believed. Now he had a chance to prove it. "Signal the fleet," ordered. "All ships prepare for FTL jump. Set course for those coordinates." "Sir," Wu said carefully, "we don't know what we're jumping into. This could be a trap." "Look at those images," Lieutenant said quietly. "Does that look like a trap to you?" Wu looked at the screen again. The footage showed children being carried to shelters, medical centers overwhelmed with wounded, entire districts reduced to rubble. "No, sir," Wu admitted. "Then we go," said firmly. "Inform Earth Command of our decision. Tell them we're responding to a distress call, and tell them we're going to show the galaxy what humanity really is." The bridge crew moved with purpose, preparing the ship for jump, returned to his command chair and strapped in. In 4 days, they would arrive at Prime. They would face an enemy they knew nothing about, fight a battle they weren't prepared for, all to save people they had never met. But that was what humans did. When someone called for help, they answered. Even if no one else would. General stood on the command deck of his flagship, watching Prime burn with satisfaction. The planet's shields would fail within hours, and then the real work would begin. His ships would land, strip the world of its valuable resources, and move on. They themselves were irrelevant. They were soft, weak creatures who had built a civilization on ideals rather than strength. "General," his tactical officer reported, "the planetary defense grid is at 20% capacity. They're trying to evacuate civilians to underground shelters." "Let them hide," said dismissively. "It only delays the inevitable." The Empire had been expanding for centuries, taking worlds and resources from species too weak to defend themselves. The Galactic Concordance made noise about protecting smaller civilizations, but they never actually did anything. The bureaucracy was too slow, too concerned with proper procedures. By the time they decided to act, worlds were already conquered. His fleet consisted of 43 warships, a force large enough to overwhelm any defense that could mount. His soldiers were trained and experienced. His weapons were tested and reliable. This should have been a simple operation. Then the sensors began screaming. "General," the tactical officer shouted, "multiple contacts emerging from FTL, unknown signatures." Turned to the main screen. 7 ships appeared in the space above Prime. They were unlike anything in the database. The design was brutal and efficient, all angles and armor plating. Weapons covered every surface. The energy readings were enormous. "Identify them," ordered. "Unable to identify, sir. The computer has no matching records. These ships are completely unknown. Before could respond, a transmission came through on all frequencies. The voice spoke in perfect, though the accent was strange. "This is Captain of the Terran Star Navy, responding to your distress call. We are here to help." Terran had never heard of such a species. He accessed the galactic database quickly. There was a reference to Terra, but it was marked as a quarantine zone, a death world, specifically noted as too dangerous for contact. Felt a moment of unease, then dismissed it. 7 ships against his 43. The numbers were clear. He opened a channel. "Unknown vessels, this is General of the Empire. You are interfering with an official military operation. Leave immediately or be destroyed." The response came quickly. "General, you are attacking a peaceful civilization and committing acts of genocide. We will not leave. Stand down your forces now." Actually laughed. "You dare threaten me with 7 ships. I have an entire fleet. Leave now while you still can." There was a pause. Then the human captain spoke again, and his voice was colder than space itself. "We gave you a chance. Remember that." Turned to his tactical officer. "Send Attack Squadron 3, destroy those ships, make it quick." 12 warships broke from the main fleet and accelerated toward the human vessels. They were fast attack ships, designed to swarm larger opponents. The formation was textbook perfect, approaching from multiple angles to divide the enemy's fire. The human ships didn't run. They didn't even move defensively. Instead, smaller craft began launching from their hangar bays. Fighters realized. Single-pilot attack craft. There were dozens of them streaming out like angry insects. "They're launching fighters against warships," said incredulously. "Fools." But then the engagement began, and understood that he had made a terrible mistake. Lieutenant Song sat in the cockpit of her fighter, hands steady on the controls. She had trained for this her entire adult life. Combat simulations, live fire exercises, years of preparation for a battle that might never come. Now it was here, and she was ready. "Tiger Squadron, form up on me," she said into her comm. "Alpha pattern, pick your targets and fire at will." Her squadron acknowledged. 20 fighters moved in perfect coordination, accelerating toward the ships. The G-forces would have killed most species, but humans had evolved on a high-gravity world. Their bodies were built to withstand pressure that would crush others. Locked onto the lead ship and fired. Rounds tore through space at incredible speeds, impacting the enemy shields. The shields flickered and died. Another burst of fire punched through the hull, and the ship began venting atmosphere. Around her, the rest of Tiger Squadron engaged with similar results. The ships were built for conventional warfare, slow and methodical combat between capital ships. They weren't prepared for fighters that moved like bullets and struck like missiles. Human reaction times were faster too. On Earth, predators had hunted humans for millions of years. Those who couldn't react quickly died. Those who survived passed on their genes. The result was a species with reflexes 3 times faster than most galactic civilizations. Dodged incoming fire without conscious thought. Her body responded before her mind finished processing the threat. She rolled, dove, and came up firing again. Another ship exploded in a ball of expanding gas. "This is Tiger Leader to all fighters," she transmitted. "They're trying to retreat, don't let them." The battle became a hunt. Ships that had come to destroy were now running for their lives, but they were too slow. Human fighters pursued them relentlessly, taking them apart piece by piece. On the flagship, General watched in horror as his attack squadron was annihilated. 12 ships destroyed in less than 10 minutes. The human fighters moved like nothing he had ever seen, darting between shots that should have hit them, striking with precision that should have been impossible. "All ships full combat alert," ordered. His confidence was gone, replaced by cold fear. "Launch all fighters. Bring weapons to full power. We need to destroy them now." The fleet moved into attack formation. Hundreds of their own fighters launched. Capital ships charged weapons. If the humans wanted a war, would give them one. But then the human capital ships began to move, and realized the fighters had just been the opening act. The TSS Indomitable and her sister ships accelerated forward at speeds that seemed impossible for vessels their size. They moved with purpose and precision, cutting through the formation like knives. Weapons fire erupted from every angle. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Commander Na coordinated the attack. Target their command ships first. Break their coordination. Firing, the weapons officer reported. Solid projectiles, accelerated to a fraction of light speed, crossed the distance in seconds. They hit shields and punched straight through. One shot could cripple a ship. 3 shots could destroy it. Launch missiles, ordered. Nuclear warheads. They detected the missile launch and tried to intercept them. But the missiles were too fast, too maneuverable. They dodged point defense fire and slammed into their targets. Nuclear explosions bloomed in the darkness, white-hot fury that consumed everything nearby. Most galactic species had abandoned nuclear weapons centuries ago. They were considered too destructive, too dangerous. But humans had been born in danger. They had learned to harness the atom, to control the fury of splitting nuclei. Now they used it as a weapon. Captain watched the battle unfold on his screens. The fleet was larger, but it was also slower, less coordinated. The human ships worked together like parts of a single organism, each one supporting the others. "Sir, they are trying to regroup," reported. "They're pulling back to a defensive formation." "Don't let them," said calmly. "Press the attack. Show them what happens when they prey on the innocent." The human fleet surged forward again. They tried to rally, tried to fight back. But they were facing something they had never encountered before. They were facing humanity, a species forged in the crucible of a death world, refined by centuries of warfare on their own planet. And they were losing. The battle had been raging for 2 hours. General's fleet was down to 31 ships, and the humans showed no signs of slowing. Every tactical decision he made was countered. Every formation he tried was broken. These Terrans fought with a combination of precision and aggression that everything he knew about warfare. "General, we need to retreat," his second-in-command urged. "We can regroup and call for reinforcements." Wanted to agree. Pride warred with survival instinct. The Empire had never retreated from a smaller force, but these weren't normal opponents. "No," said finally, "we still have superior numbers. There are only 7 ships. If we coordinate properly, we can overwhelm them." What didn't understand was that humans had spent their entire existence learning how to defeat larger opponents. On Earth, humans had hunted animals 10 times their size. They had fought wars against impossible odds. They had survived by being smarter, faster, and more determined than anything that tried to kill them. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Commander Na studied the tactical display. They were trying to reorganize their fleet into a defensive sphere. It was a smart move, protecting their weaker ships inside a shell of stronger ones. "They're adapting," she said to Captain. "Good defensive strategy." "Then we don't fight their defense," replied. "We bypass it, prepare boarding parties. We're going to take their command ships." Smiled, it was not a kind smile. "I'll inform Sergeant Jin." Deep in the ship, Marine Sergeant Jin was already preparing his squad. He was a broad-shouldered man with hands and eyes that had seen too much combat. Around him, 20 Marines checked their equipment with practiced efficiency. "Listen up," Jin said. "We're going for a ride. The captain wants us to board enemy vessels and secure them. Standard breach and clear. Watch your sectors, watch your teammates, and remember your training." Private Dahl raised his hand. He was young, barely 20, fresh from training. "Sergeant, what do we know about the enemy?" "They're called the," Jin replied. They evolved on a world with half Earth's gravity. They've been fighting weaker species for centuries. They think they're tough." He paused and grinned. "They're about to learn different." The squad laughed. It was a hard sound, full of confidence born from training on a world that tried to kill you from birth. Humans were born at a disadvantage in the galaxy. Most species were taller, had better senses, or possessed natural weapons. But humans had something else. They had endurance. They had pain tolerance. They had the ability to keep fighting long after they should have been dead. "Insertion craft are ready," the pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Let's go kill some bad guys." The boarding craft launched from the Indomitable like bullets. They were small, fast, and heavily armored. Point defense systems tried to shoot them down, but the craft jinked and weaved through the fire. Within minutes, they slammed into the hull of a command ship. Cutting lasers burned through the armor plating. Jin and his squad stacked up at the breach point, weapons ready. The moment the hole was large enough, they poured through. The soldiers on the other side never stood a chance. Jin moved through the corridor like water, smooth and unstoppable. His rifle barked 3 times and 3 soldiers fell. Behind him, his squad spread out in a practice pattern, covering angles and clearing rooms. They were taller than humans, with long limbs and narrow bodies. They carried energy weapons that could burn through most materials. Under normal circumstances, they were formidable soldiers. But these weren't normal circumstances. A soldier appeared from a side corridor and fired. Jin's armor absorbed the shot, and he crossed the distance between them in 3 steps. His fist caught in the center mass, and the alien flew backward like he'd been hit by a vehicle. The ribs shattered from the impact. Another rushed him with a blade. Jin blocked the strike with his armored forearm, grabbed the alien's weapon hand and squeezed. Bones crunched. The screamed and dropped the blade. Jin finished him with a strike to the throat. Around him, his squad was cutting through the defenders like they weren't there. Private Dahl, despite his youth, moved with the same efficiency. He shot 2, dodged return fire, and kept advancing without breaking stride. "Bridges ahead," Jin called out. "Stack up." The squad formed at the bridge door. Jin attached a breaching charge and stepped back. The explosion blew the door inward and the Marines rushed through. The bridge crew tried to resist. A few managed to draw weapons, but it was over in seconds. Jin's squad secured the bridge and he approached the command console. "This is Sergeant Jin to Indomitable. Bridge secured. We have control of the ship." On 2 other vessels, similar scenes played out. Human Marines boarding enemy ships, overwhelming their defenders through sheer physical superiority and tactical expertise. They had been fighting soft species for so long they'd forgotten what it meant to face a predator. Back on the Indomitable, Captain received the reports with satisfaction. 3 command ships captured. Excellent work. "Sir," Lieutenant Wu called from the science station, "I'm detecting a transmission from the planet's surface. It's Ambassador Az. He's asking if we're really here to help." Open the channel himself. "Ambassador, this is Captain. Yes, we're here to help. Your distress call reached us and we came as fast as we could." The screen showed a slender alien with large, gentle eyes, as looked like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "But, who are you? What species fights like this?" "We're human," said simply. "We're from a planet called Earth, and we believe that when someone calls for help, you answer." As his eyes filled with tears. "The Concordance didn't come. Our allies abandoned us, but you came from nowhere." "We came from somewhere," corrected gently. "We came from a place that taught us the strong must protect the weak. Now, Ambassador, I need you to keep your people in the shelters. This battle isn't over yet." As if to punctuate his words, alarms blared across the Indomitable. "Captain, the fleet is moving," reported. "They're not retreating. They're forming up for a major assault." Studied the tactical display. General was committing everything. All 31 remaining ships were moving into attack formation. It was a desperate move, an all-or-nothing gamble. "He thinks he can still win," said quietly. "Can he?" Wu asked nervously. Looked at his crew. Commander, steady and unshakable. Lieutenant Wu, brilliant despite his youth. The weapons officers, the engineers, the pilots. Every single one of them had volunteered for this mission. Every single one of them had chosen to risk their lives for strangers. "No," said with certainty. "He can't win, because he's fighting for conquest. We're fighting for something bigger." He activated ship-wide communications. "All hands, this is the captain. The enemy is making their final push. They want to break us through overwhelming force, but we're going to show them something they've never seen before. We're going to show them what humans do when innocent lives are at stake. We're going to show them why you never, ever threaten something a human has decided to protect. Battle stations. Give them everything we have." Throughout the ship, the crew responded. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Min pushed the reactors to maximum output. In the fighter bays, pilots like Lieutenant Song launched for another sortie. In the weapon stations, gunners locked onto targets and prepared to fire. The fleet charged forward, a wall of ships and firepower. It should have been intimidating. It should have made the humans retreat. Instead, the 7 Terran ships accelerated to meet them head-on. The second phase of the battle was about to begin, and General was about to learn a painful lesson. When you hunt the innocent, you sometimes wake something worse. You wake the protectors. You wake the ones who decided long ago that some things are worth fighting for, worth dying for. You wake humanity. General watched his fleet close in on the human ships, 31 vessels against 7. The mathematics were simple. The outcome should have been certain, yet doubt gnawed at him. He had lost 12 ships already. His boarding teams had been wiped out. The humans fought like nothing he had ever encountered. "General," his tactical officer said, "the humans aren't retreating. They're moving to engage." "Good," said, trying to sound confident. "Let them come to us. All ships focus fire on their flagship. Concentrate everything on that one vessel." It was sound strategy. Destroy the command ship and the others would falter, but was making a critical assumption. He assumed humans thought like he assumed they would panic without central leadership. He was wrong. The fleet opened fire. Energy weapons and missiles converged on the Indomitable from multiple angles. The space around the human flagship became a storm of destructive force. On the Indomitable's bridge, damage reports flooded in. "Shields at 60%, a crewman called. Starboard armor taking heavy fire." "Divert power from non-essential systems," Commander ordered calmly. "Route everything to shields and weapons." "Commander, if we keep taking this much fire, we won't last long," Lieutenant Wu warned. "We don't need long," replied. She opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, execute attack pattern Omega. Show them what happens when they make us angry." Throughout the human fleet, ships responded instantly. They didn't need lengthy orders or detailed instructions. Every captain knew their role. They had trained for this. Humans had been coordinating complex hunts since before they built cities. It was in their blood. The TSS Defiant and the TSS Relentless broke from formation and flanked the fleet at high speed. The TSS Vengeance and TSS Thunder moved to cut off escape routes. The remaining ships formed with the Indomitable at the center. General realized too late that he had been outmaneuvered. "They're surrounding us. All ships fall back to." His order was interrupted by explosions. The Defiant and Relentless had opened fire on the rear guard, tearing into the lighter vessels. 3 ships exploded in rapid succession. The formation began to break apart as captains tried to respond to threats from multiple directions. "Stay in formation," screamed. "Don't break ranks." But discipline was crumbling. They had conquered dozens of species, but they had never fought one that hit back this hard. They were used to victories, not desperate battles against an enemy that seemed to have no fear. That's when made his fatal mistake. He saw the planet below, still protected by failing shields. He saw the civilians sheltering underground, and he saw an opportunity to force the humans to negotiate. "Target the refugee centers on the surface," he ordered. "Show these humans what happens when they interfere." His tactical officer hesitated. "Sir, that's a civilian population. The Concordance laws." "The Concordance isn't here," snapped. "Fire on the planet now." 3 ships broke from the battle and moved into bombardment position, their weapons charged, preparing to rain death on defenseless civilians below. On the Indomitable, Lieutenant Wu detected the movement immediately. "Captain, 3 ships are targeting the planet's surface. They're aiming at the refugee centers." The bridge went silent. Every human present understood what they were seeing. The enemy was about to murder civilians to gain leverage. Children, families, people who had done nothing wrong except exist. Captain's expression changed. The calm, professional demeanor fell away. What remained was something primal, something that had made humans the dominant predator on their world. Cold, controlled rage. "No," said quietly, then louder, "no." He activated fleet-wide communications. His voice was ice and fury. "All ships, they just targeted civilians. They just threatened the innocents we came to protect. New rules, no mercy, no prisoners. We show them what happens when you make that mistake." "Sir," said carefully, "you're ordering." "I'm ordering total engagement," interrupted. "Drop defensive protocols. Full power to weapons and engines. Ram them if you have to. They wanted to see what humans are capable of. Show them." Throughout the fleet, something changed. Humans had limits. They had rules. They believed in honor and proportional response. But those limits existed for civilized warfare, for enemies who respected basic decency. They had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Lieutenant Song heard the order in her fighter. She looked at her squadron, saw the same cold anger reflected in their faces. "Tiger Squadron, new objective. Stop those bombardment ships, whatever it takes." Her squadron accelerated toward the 3 vessels preparing to fire on the planet. They pushed their fighters beyond safety limits, engines screaming. G-forces crushed them into their seats, but they didn't slow down. The ships detected the incoming fighters and tried to defend themselves. Point defense systems opened fire. 1 human fighter took a direct hit and exploded. Then another, but the rest kept coming. S fighter was hit in the wing, alarms blared, atmosphere vented. She ignored it all and kept flying. She locked onto the lead bombardment ship and fired everything she had. Rounds, missiles, even her emergency plasma charges. The ship's shields collapsed. Her missiles punched through the hull. The ship shuddered but didn't stop charging its weapons. "Not good enough," muttered. She adjusted her course. "Tiger leader to all fighters. I'm making a run. Cover me." "No," her wingman shouted. "That's suicide." "That's our job," replied calmly. She aimed her damaged fighter directly at the ship's weapon array and pushed the throttle to maximum. The fighter accelerated, becoming a missile itself. Fire tore chunks from her hull. Her shields failed. The cockpit depressurized. Song died 1 second before impact, but her fighter continued on trajectory, slamming into the bombardment ship's weapons with the force of a meteorite. The resulting explosion destroyed both vessels and damaged the 2 ships nearby. The civilian bombardment was stopped. On the planet's surface, Ambassador has watched the sacrifice from his bunker. He saw the human fighter pilot give her life to save his people. Tears streamed down his face. "Why?" he whispered. "Why would they do this for us?" In space, the battle reached its crescendo. The human fleet tore into the with renewed fury. Every human had heard about Lieutenant's sacrifice. Every human had seen the enemy target civilians. Now they fought without restraint. Marine Sergeant Jin, still aboard the captured command ship, led his squad deeper into the vessel. They found General's location and breached the command room. Stood there surrounded by his last guards. He raised his weapon, but Jin was faster. He shot the guards, then crossed the room in 3 strides. He grabbed by the throat and lifted the alien off the ground. "You targeted children," Jin said, his voice shaking with rage. "You thought you could use innocent lives as leverage against humans." Struggled, but it was like struggling against a vice. "You're monsters." "No," Jin said coldly. "We're human, and you just learned why you should never threaten what we protect." He dropped, who collapsed gasping. "You're a prisoner now. You're going to watch what happens to your fleet. You're going to see what you brought on yourself." Outside, the fleet was breaking apart. Ship after ship fell to human weapons. Some tried to surrender. Others tried to flee. The humans accepted no surrenders and allowed no escapes. By the time the sun set on Prime, the battle was over. 31 ships had entered that final engagement. None survived. The orbital space around Prime was silent now. Where 43 warships had once threatened destruction, there was only debris, scattered pieces of hull, frozen atmosphere, the remains of a fleet that had made a fatal error. Captain stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the cleanup operations. Human ships moved through the wreckage, searching for survivors. They found none among the. They found 17 prisoners, kept in the ships as hostages. All 17 were returned to the planet alive. "Final casualty report, sir," Commander said quietly. She held a data pad, but she already knew the numbers by heart. 6 fighters lost, Lieutenant Song and 5 others, 43 crew members injured. The Defiant took heavy damage but remains operational. Nodded slowly. 6 pilots, 6 humans who had traveled light years from home to fight for strangers, 6 people who would never see Earth again. "Make sure their families are personally," said, "and make sure they know. Their children saved an entire civilization." "Yes, sir." A priority message came through from the planet's surface. Ambassador as appeared on the screen. The leader looked older than he had days ago, marked by the stress of near extinction, but his eyes held something new: hope. "Captain, as said, we would like to invite you to the surface. We need to thank you properly." "That's not necessary," Ambassador replied. "We only did what anyone should do." "But no one else did," as said softly. "Please, come down, let us show our gratitude." 2 hours later, a shuttle carrying Captain, Commander, and Lieutenant Wu descended through Prime's atmosphere. They landed in the capital city, or what remained of it. The bombardment had left scars, but were already beginning repairs. When the humans stepped off the shuttle, they were met by thousands of. The crowd stood in silence, then as one, they bowed. It was their highest sign of respect. "Felt uncomfortable. Please don't, we're just soldiers doing our job." Ambassador as approached. Up close, the humans could see how different their species were. As was tall and slender, his body built for a gentle world. His skin was pale, almost translucent. He looked fragile, like a strong wind might break him. "You don't understand," as said. "The Galactic Concordance has mutual defense treaties. We sent 17 calls for help. Not one was answered. We were going to die and everyone just watched." "Why didn't they come?" asked. "Politics, bureaucracy, fear of the," as shook his head. "The Concordance moved slowly. By the time they decided to help, we would have been extinct. But you heard our call and came immediately. You didn't know us. You had no treaties with us. Yet you came, and you lost people saving us." Wu looked around at the damaged city. "Why did they attack you? What did you do?" "Nothing," as said sadly. "We have resources they wanted. Rare minerals, strategic location. In the galaxy, that's enough reason. The strong take from the weak. That's how it's always been." "Not anymore," said firmly. "Not if we have anything to say about it." As led them to a memorial site. Civilians had built a monument overnight. It was a simple stone structure with 7 pillars, representing the 7 human ships. On each pillar were names. The 6 pilots who had died, every crew member who had been injured, and at the center, a plaque with words in both and the human language they had learned from the Indomitables database. They came from far away, they owed us nothing, yet they answered when others would not. We are forever grateful to humanity. May we prove worthy of their sacrifice. Felt his throat tighten. Around him, children placed flowers at the base of the monument. One small child approached and handed her a drawing. It showed the Indomitable in orbit, drawn in crayon with the words "Thank you" written beneath. Knelt down to the child's level. "What's your name?" "Lyra," the child said shyly. "Lyra, do you know why we came?" asked gently. The child shook her head. "We came because someone needed help, and helping others is what good people do. Your people would have done the same for us." "Really?" Lyra asked. "I believe so," said, smiling. "Remember that, okay? When you grow up, if someone needs help, you help them. That's how we make the galaxy better." Later, in a private meeting room, as showed the humans something troubling. "This is the Galactic Concordance database. I want you to see what they know about you." On the screen appeared Earth. The entry was marked with warning symbols. Quarantine Zone, Class 12 Death World, Species, Human, Status, Dangerous, Recommendation, No Contact. "A death world," Wu said. "What does that mean?" "It means your planet is classified as one of the most dangerous in known space," as explained. "High gravity, extreme weather, aggressive predators. Most species that evolve on such worlds either destroy themselves or become conquerors. The Concordance has protocols. Death world species are monitored and restricted." "They were afraid of us," said Understanding. "Yes, they thought if humans reached space you would be like the warriors who spread death." As looked at the humans with wonder. "But you're not. You're warriors who protect life. I don't think the galaxy has seen anything like you before." "What happens now?" asked. "Now the galaxy learns what we learned," as said. "That humans are here, that you're not what they expected. The Empire will demand answers about their lost fleet. The Concordance will have to respond to your existence. Everything is about to change." "Let it change," said. "Earth has been hiding long enough. We reverse-engineered technology from Concordance probe ships that came to study us. We built our own fleet. We've been preparing for this moment. Maybe it's time the galaxy knew we exist." "They'll be afraid," as warned. "Some will be," agreed. "But maybe some will be glad. How many other species are calling for help right now with no one answering? How many more are out there, waiting to die while the Concordance debates?" The meeting ended with agreements. Prime would share its knowledge of the galaxy with humanity. In return, humans would help repair the damage and establish a defense system to prevent future attacks. 3 days later, the human fleet prepared to leave. They left behind medical supplies, reconstruction equipment, and defensive satellites. They also left something more important, proof that not all powerful species were predators. Captain stood in the Indomitable's ready room, recording a message for Earth Command. "This is Captain, final report from the Prime incident. We responded to a distress call from an unknown species. We engaged hostile forces and successfully defended the people. We lost 6 good people in the process." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Sir, we've kept humanity hidden for 80 years because we were afraid of how the galaxy would react to us. But I think it's time to stop hiding. The galaxy needs to know we're here, not as conquerors, not as threats, but as protectors, as people who will answer when others call for help." The Galactic Concordance has rules and protocols. They have bureaucracy and politics. But they forgot the most important rule. When someone is dying and calls for help, you go. You don't debate. You don't wait for approval. You go. I'm recommending we establish formal diplomatic contact with the galaxy. Let them know Earth is here. Let them know humans are ready to take our place among the stars. And let them know that from now on, when someone calls for help, we'll be listening." The message sent, returned to the bridge. The fleet formed up and prepared to jump to FTL. "Course set for Earth, sir," the navigation officer reported. "Wait," said he looked at. "Check the long-range sensors. Are there any other distress calls?" Smiled and began scanning. A moment later her expression changed. "Sir, I'm picking up a weak signal. It's coming from the system about 6 light-years from here. Another species calling for help." "How many ships do we have operational?" "All 7, sir. The Defiant is damaged but flight-worthy." Looked around his bridge. He saw the exhaustion on his crew's faces. They had just fought a major battle. They deserved rest. But he also saw something else. He saw determination. He saw humans who understood what they had started. "Send a message to the system," ordered. "Tell them help is coming, then plot a course." He settled into his command chair. "Earth can wait a little longer. There are people who need us." As the fleet jumped to FTL, carrying humanity's message across the stars, Ambassador as stood on Prime and looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, the humans were already racing toward their next rescue. The galaxy had spent centuries building systems and rules. They had created bureaucracies and committees. They had made helping others complicated and slow. Then humans arrived, and humans had a simpler rule: when someone needs help, you help them. The SOS had been meant for allies. It had summoned something far more dangerous and far more valuable: humans who gave a damn, and the galaxy would never be the same.